What is your best chance for pro vocals? Is it the right saturation setting, a reverb that ties the vocal into the mix, or could it be the most powerful and often overlooked processor, EQ? Let's dive into this, but first, we have a new membership. When you sign up, you automatically receive 10 mastering credits for our studio, 2 additional masters each month, educational courses, and a lot more. So let's start off with what you need to know about EQ. So EQ is everywhere when you're making music. It's present in the timbre of an instrument or a voice, the microphone and capsule being used, the position of the microphone, the preamp used and its settings, even in the sampling rate used for the session. Now, every processing decision you make, every nuance in the performance or the dials that you turn will act like an EQ in one way or another. That's why understanding an EQ and the frequency response that it can so quickly alter is the key to creating pro vocals. So let's look at a vocal's frequency response in depth, how you could use other processors to EQ, and how it all comes together to create a pro sound. First, let's listen to a raw vocal in the context of a mix and pay attention to how it sounds already, how the voice, the mic, and the preamp have already shaped the sound.
Bar fights and sleepless nights, another day's another blur. Bar fights and sleepless nights, another day's another blur. I'll never miss the midnight show.
Next, let's discuss some important frequency ranges and their pros and cons. So we can hear from about 20 Hz to 20 kHz, and a vocalist can occupy almost all of these frequencies. The fundamental is the lowest note in any performance. Some signal might exist below this fundamental, but it's likely unmusical and unrelated. A bass singer can have a fundamental as low as 70 Hz. A soprano can have a fundamental as high as a couple thousand Hz, but it's likely going to be a few hundred Hz for the lowest note. Now, a high-pass filter can be used to attenuate to right below the lowest fundamental, and with that in place, we're left with only musical aspects from the vocal. The fundamental to a few hundred Hz creates a sense of fullness and body, but if it's too high in amplitude, it'll cover up or mask delicate higher frequencies, reducing clarity. Now, too low, and the vocals sound empty. The area around 500 Hz is occupied by resonances from the vocalist's chest cavity and the vowels, like A and E, making it an important region if clear pronunciation is required for a song. Too little, and it can be hard to discern the lyrics. Too much, and the vocal sounds unnaturally boxy, like it's being sung through a tube or a resonator. Higher resonances, typically from the nasal cavity, reside right above this, between about 800 and 1.3 kHz. They're required for a balanced or natural sound, but can also make a vocal sound nasally if they're not controlled. Next, our ear canals amplify 2 to 5 kHz, making it the range to which we're most sensitive. When a vocal's 2 to 5 kHz is balanced, it'll sound clear, upfront, intelligible, and natural. But if it's too high, it'll quickly become harsh or shrill. Too low, and it sounds unclear or buried as if the singer has their hand in front of their mouth. Now, from the top of this range to about 12 kHz, we have the percussive aspects of consonants. So think T's, C's, K's, S's, and so on. Like vowels, these are important for pronunciation. Too little, and it'll be hard to discern what the vocalist is saying. Too much, and the vocals sound shrill, harsh, and unnaturally percussive. Above this, we have air, a very low amplitude but pleasant range that includes the vocal's highest harmonics and reflections from the room. Added air can give a vocal an ethereal and clean quality. Too little, and the vocal has a darker sound. Now, neither option is inherently good or bad. So with these ranges understood and what can happen when we have too much or too little of them, let's take a listen to each range isolated, including what was attenuated by our high-pass filter. I'll also amplify and attenuate each range so we can hear what happens when they're too prevalent or too quiet.
Bar fights and sleepless nights, another day's another blur. Bar fights and sleepless nights, another day's another blur. I'll never miss the midnight show. Bar fights and sleepless nights, another day's another blur. Bar fights and sleepless nights, another day's another blur. I'll never miss the midnight show.
Next, let's think about saturation as additive EQ. So harmonics give a sound its timbre. That's why if a vocalist and a trumpet hit the same note, we can easily discern the two. Their fundamentals might be the same, but their harmonics differ in amplitude and order. Although harmonics have a distinct psychoacoustic effect, they can also be thought of as narrow EQ bands. Each harmonic occupies a small frequency range, and it amplifies this range like a narrow bell filter. But whereas an EQ amplifies from the loudest parts up, a harmonic is generated from the noise floor or the quietest parts up. So think back to our important frequency ranges. What could we do if we wanted more of a particular range? Well, we could amplify it with an EQ, or we could introduce harmonics within that frequency range. Say the vocal lacks some clarity. I'd need to amplify 2 to 5 kilohertz. With a saturator isolated to this range, I can do just that, but with harmonics. So to illustrate this idea, I'm going to attenuate the vocal's clarity purposefully, and with a saturator, I'll utilize harmonics to amplify the buried range, balancing the vocal. Then, we'll listen to the range amplified with EQ, and notice that in both cases, the vocal is balanced, but the timbres vary slightly due to the different methods used.
Bar fights and sleepless nights, another day's another blur. Bar fights and sleepless nights, another day's another blur. I'll never miss the midnight show.
Next, let's think about compression as subtractive EQ. So the best example that I can give you for using compression as EQ is with a de-esser. It attenuates a specific frequency range to reduce the amplitude of sibilants. Odds are you've used one before. So let's look at a frequency response of a vocal that has a lot of sibilants. Notice the spike of high frequencies that occur periodically. Now watch what happens when I enable a de-esser. The de-essed range is now attenuated. Here you can easily see how the vocal is equalized by our frequency-specific compressor. Like the saturator, this has a different sound than traditional EQ. Whereas equalizing this range will create static attenuation, a de-esser uses dynamic attenuation. When it's engaged, the vocal is equalized. When it isn't, the vocal is not equalized. Now I'm sure you know what a de-esser sounds like, so I think it's best if we move on to using reverb as EQ. Now, reverb can both amplify and attenuate a frequency range. It could amplify the overall range while attenuating the initial attack and decay of a signal. For example, say we reverberate a vocal's highest frequencies from 5 kHz to 20 kHz. We're adding reflections, which would increase the overall level. But what if the beginning of the vocal, like a consonant T, K, S, etc., is reverberated? The multiple reflections will blend together, softening the percussive sound and reduce its amplitude through phase cancellation, even if the overall range is increased in amplitude. So to retain consonants while reverberating the range, I could set a higher pre-delay to let the consonant through before the reverb kicked in, making the reverb solely additive. So let's listen to reverb on a vocal, first with 0 milliseconds of pre-delay, and notice how percussive sibilance is reduced, but that the overall range is amplified. Then we'll listen with pre-delay increased to retain the consonant's percussive details.
Bar fights and sleepless nights, another day's another blur. Bar fights and sleepless nights, another day's another blur. I'll never miss the midnight show.
Last up, I'm going to put all of these ideas together. So I think this illustrates that processors are not separate. They affect seemingly unrelated parts of a signal, most often the frequency response. When you equalize your vocal, you could EQ with an EQ, a saturator, a frequency-specific compressor, and even a reverb. And this video barely scratches the surface. So many other variables and processors can, and often do, affect the frequency response of our vocals. So I'm going to create a quick vocal chain starting with subtractive EQ, compression, then de-essing, saturation, reverb, and lastly, additive EQ. I'll use the ideas covered here to amplify or attenuate important ranges as needed, not relying solely on EQ to change my vocal's response. Now, as I enable the processors one by one, please pay particular attention to the vocal's frequency response.
Bar fights and sleepless nights, another day's another blur. Bar fights and sleepless nights, another day's another blur. I'll never miss the midnight show. Bar fights and sleepless nights, another day's another blur. Bar fights and sleepless nights, another day's another blur. I'll never miss the midnight show.
As I was saying at the beginning of the video, we have a new membership. When you sign up for the membership, we'll master your first 10 songs for free. Additionally, every month, we'll master 2 more songs for free. These 10 free mastered songs and 2 monthly free additional mastered songs will continuously accumulate in your account. Furthermore, you get access to our educational courses. Our pre-mastering course and our School of Mastering course are now available in their entirety. Collectively, there are 21 video, nearly 4-hour course that teach mastering in depth from a technical, practical, and creative perspective. Additionally, members can access our community where you can connect with fellow engineers, ask questions, share mixes for review, and a lot more. Last up, you get some great perks like 51 mixing and mastering chain templates, 20 unmixed multi-track sessions from various artists spanning multiple genres that you could use for mixing practice, 42 finished mixes for mastering practice, and 58 plugin presets created by our engineers. All of this is available to you for a low monthly cost. And if you sign up for the membership today, you'll receive a custom 70% discount, which brings the total monthly membership cost down to $15. And this discount will be locked in, so you'll continue to receive it for as long as you're a member. If you're interested, use the link below to receive your 10 free masters and your 70% discount.